Welcome to the 50th episode of the GameFor Podcast. In this episode, still recording from home, we'll talk about FOMO in tabletop games and hopefully what you can do about it. I'm Adam.
I'm Matt.
And this is the GameFor Podcast. GameFor is a platform to help connect tabletop gamers and to help you get more out of your tabletop gaming. Matt and I are part of a software development and design company called Milkcan. And because most of the folks at Milkcan love tabletop games, we developed the GameFor app and launched it in early 2018. We launched this companion podcast in June 2019 to help tabletop gamers get more enjoyment out of their hobby. Due to the COVID-19 global pandemic, we hibernated the GameFor app in July of 2020 and plan to bring back a retooled version of the app for Android, iOS, and web when gaming in person is safer. Until then, we'll keep bringing you this podcast to help you get more out of your tabletop gaming. So what's been going on for the last couple of weeks? That's a good question, isn't it?
Right.
It's been, we do these every 2 weeks, and there's always something new going on.
Right.
What have you been doing? You got back from Florida.
2 weeks already.
Yeah,
so back from Florida, back from back out the weekend to start. It's nice out, so start doing all the projects around the house and stuff like that. But did get some hobby in finally this weekend. I had finished. I think last podcast I was just about done with all my SW Legion, my Star Wars Legion stuff.
Building.
So I finished.
Building the models and stuff, right?
Yeah, from the original
the core box.
Core box, yeah. So there was a couple things I had to finish up there just for some assembly, and then I got everything, basically all the bases done last night.
Like texturing on the bases and stuff?
Yeah, texturing, adding some rocks, using the super glue and baking soda trick a little bit to get some nice sandy base and cat litter and all the fun stuff to kind of give it some interesting look. So now I've got to just kind of attach everything and get everything primed up. So it is starting to come together.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I saw the picture you posted. The bases, the texture looks good. I like doing. I mean, with my kill team stuff, I'm real light on texture because I'm trying to make them look like they're standing on like streets. So I don't wanna, you know what I mean? Like there's already a little bit of a very tiny surface texture to the bases, which kind of looks like asphalt. And if you paint everything kind of grayish, it kind of works that way. And then you just put some little pieces of kitty litter here and there to look like some rubble from, urban combat or whatever, maybe a brick or something like that. But yeah, you went more like, you can do it a lot of different ways. Desert, you could do it dirt, you could do a lot of different things. But
I was definitely I was going to go full desert, and now I'm thinking I might do a little bit more, like a Southwest theme. I might even do it kind of like some snow in it. I don't know. I think it'll be kind of. I'll do it, but yeah, most of the time it's like Blood Bowl. I'm like, it's just going to be. I mean, they're playing on turf, so it's just grass.
Grass makes sense.
It should be relatively flat. Maybe not for Blood Bowl. Maybe there should be craters and stuff everywhere. But you've got that, and then like you said, other stuff is a lot of like streets and everything else. So this was the first time I think I've gotten a chance to really kind of have some fun with what I was coming up with. So
yeah, no, that's cool. Nice.
Yeah, did that, and then we have been one of my gaming groups that's playing Pathfinder. We've been getting together over Discord, and kind of fleshing out some backstories. Some I'm guessing they're going to be like story hooks and stuff like that. So that we're all ready to go because we are scheduled to play Sunday evening this week.
Nice.
So,
nice.
Session 1.
When you are a DM, I was meaning to ask you this. Do you like to get story, like background stuff from your players and then try to figure out ways, if possible, to work some of those pieces potentially into the campaign?
Yeah, usually. At least some stuff, like especially like if there's stuff that they want to do. It's a little bit trickier when you're doing kind of you're out of the box, but even then, I find that like there's going to be times where side hooks and stuff can do it, and it's a good way to kind of like pull players in a little better. when you kind of like, maybe rather than just being a generic NPC that they had thrown in there, maybe the NPC is actually one of their, like the friend that he, went to war with and lost touch of, thought was dead, comes back, and that's the NPC that comes to talk to them, rather than just being some random, soldier or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it helps to bring, like, the players spend the time generating the story and the concept and writing up something. If you can then take that, I think, and implement it and make it part of the story, that can obviously bring
Right.
them
Yeah.
a
If you
little
could
bit more
personalize
closer
it,
to what's going on. Yeah.
yeah, and that's why it's good taking notes too, because then you can always pull in stuff that came in before. I'm not the best at it. It's definitely a skill that I've still learning.
Hmm.
But yeah, that's always kind of what I found is a good way to kind of really get some easy uh, kind of like bring yourself to the next level, get some easy wins from your players, is by bringing up stuff that happened earlier that was really unique to them, or stuff that's back to their backstory that is now kind of involved.
Yeah. Yeah. I know Matt, the other Matt at work, is he's going to start doing some dungeon mastering for, I think, D&D, right? Did he talk to you about that?
Oh, you did not know? That's
Oh,
awesome.
we were talking in a stand-up one morning, and he was asking me some questions, and I'm like, I have literally maybe never DM'd ever, even in like the 5th grade when I was playing more.
Yeah.
But I asked him, I told him that he should talk to you. But he must have not mentioned it yet. But yeah, he said he's got some friends who are looking to play D&D, and he has become de facto DM, which happens
Nice.
sometimes. And
Yep.
so yeah,
That's what happened to me. Yeah.
yeah. But
But
that's cool though. Well, nice. You done anything else recently, or is that pretty much?
that's pretty much it. Like I said, I
Yeah.
think I feel like I'm now that it's nice weather out, that's when I'm going to start gaming.
Yeah, no, I know. Well, I mean, it's a situation, and I kind of mentioned this in the paragraph at the beginning of the show, but we're hoping for in store or in person gaming to becoming a bigger thing. Like I know you've got
Right.
your second vaccine. I'm getting
Yep.
mine in a couple of days. Um, and it's one of those situations that's going to be safer at that point for people. And again, you may like. I know I was just telling you, I think yesterday, that one of our local stores had a I don't know, a decent size event in store, and everybody had to wear a mask and all that kind of stuff. And
Right.
you were told, if you're feeling lousy, don't come, and that kind of stuff. And it's the standard stuff. But, you are starting to see places doing that and getting back into it. We're finding that like the big official stuff is still, kind of a no bueno. I mean, like
Yeah.
Friday
I
Night
think
Magic is still
yeah.
not in, you can't put numbers into the system for that and everything like that. So,
Right.
but there are definitely people getting together and playing, and even in stores, they're getting together and playing to some degree. So we're heading in the direction, I guess. So yeah,
Hopefully it's not off the cliff, but
right. Yeah, that's also true. Let's see. What have I been doing? I have been I'm nearly finished painting the skeletons from the Cursed City Warhammer Quest Cursed City game box set thing from
yeah, those look
Games
really
Workshop.
nice.
Yeah, thanks. They're turning out decent. I'm pretty happy with them. They are, like I said, I've been painting them on Twitch, and they just basically at this point need details now. There's like a couple of like, because I've been going through and painting them in a like an assembly line style. So
hmm
like, all right, now we're going to work on armor on everybody. Now we're going to work on shields on everybody or whatever.
Right.
And but there are a couple of models that are a little special and have things that other guys don't. So there's one skeleton that's got a flag, and so I want to do some
Oh,
more
yeah,
work
yeah.
on
So a
that.
little
There's another
flare.
skeleton that's got it's got a what do you call it? Like he's carrying like an extra sword. Although maybe that's the flag guy. I don't know. Anyway, there's a couple little extra pieces here and there that some of them are carrying, that I want to be able to go back in and paint that I haven't done yet because
Sure.
nobody else has one. And then I want to just do some sort of weathering and some sort of rust kind of stuff on some of the
Mm,
armor because, they're skeletons and they're not necessarily polishing their stuff in between battles. They're probably just laying on the ground, most likely.
yeah. I was pleasantly surprised or happy. I don't know.
Yeah,
Happy
yeah.
is probably a bad word for it too. But when
Mm.
you were doing your assembly line, that you kind of did something that I thought I was probably the only one that did, where you're
What's
like,
that?
oh, I completely missed like this like rib kit area or something like that. Like I feel
Oh
like
yeah.
I'll get them and I'm like, okay, I got this done. I'm doing this, got that done, and then like it's like 5 or 6 steps later, I'm like, wait a minute, I never got this one part done for this, and I have to like, okay, go
Oh
back to
yeah.
do it, and it's like, oh,
Especially when you're talking. Like when I'm sitting there and I'm like
oh
talking and
yeah,
reading chat and all that kind of stuff, I will miss stuff, especially when I'm painting a bunch. Like this is 10 skeletons. And there was a couple of spots last night where I'm like going through and working on like the next step or several steps down. And then I look and I'm like, oh, I never put wash on the back of this guy's leg. Okay, well, and then I'll set that one will get set outside the rotation. And I'm like, okay, well, he's going to have to be, we have to do some special work on this one and then put him back in rotation. It'll be fine. But yeah, drying times and things like that come into play when you're trying to figure that stuff out. But it's usually not terrible, but there's always usually something. But yeah, so those are, like I said, nearly done. So my next project, I mean, I'll paint them again on Friday, and then they'll be done on Switch. And then probably this upcoming Monday night, I'll start a new project, which will still be Cursed City because I've got more models that I want to paint from that set. And I will probably I've built 4 of the heroes and one of the kind of bad guy heroes. I don't know what you would call that. Villains, I guess. I don't know. He's basically the bad guy is the kind of the captain of the skeletons. He's known as the watch guard or guard watch or something. I forget his name, but he's another skeleton as well. And but he's a special sculpt kind of by himself. And then the other 4 models are all the heroes that are part of the game. So there's like a woman, like a woman who's a knight. There's a guy who is a witch hunter type dude who's kind of tall. There's another guy who
cool sculpt. Yeah,
it's a very cool sculpt. The other guy is like, I don't know, he's got like a pistol and a sword and he's got fancy boots and he's a bit of a fop in my opinion. I don't know what his deal is. And then the last guy is like this sort of wizardy dude who had this really weird face mask and he had like a really weird, like, I originally thought it was a weird tongue coming out of his mouth.
Okay.
Even when I'd see the painted versions, I'm like, why has he got this weird tongue coming out of his mouth? But then people are like, no, that's his beard. But it like literally goes down like longer than he is. It goes at an angle away from his face and it's like touches the ground still.
Weird.
And I'm like, I have a beard. My beard is not, because it's so straight, like this beard. It would be like perfectly straight all the way down to the ground. And I'm like, yeah, that's not a thing. So anyway, long story short is I cut all that junk away. I didn't need his face. I didn't need his weird beard. And I trimmed that stuff away and I replaced his face with a skull because there's no problem in Warhammer that you can't fix with another skull. So I did that. And I think he's cool. I'm not going to really be using any of these models directly actually for Cursed City. I'm going to be using them for other games. So just having a cool wizard skull head guy or whatever is neat. Plus he looks like he fell off of a Led Zeppelin album cover. So
he does kind of look like that. That was actually a high school project. We had to do clay sculpt. We had to do it. We had to take a 2D image that we found and do a 3D sculpt. And that was the guy I did, the guy holding the lantern overlooking the city.
Is that like from Houses of the Holy or one of those?
No,
what album
mine was 4. It was a Led Zeppelin 4 on the inside.
Oh, on the inside. Okay, yeah. Because on the cover of 4, there's the blimp, isn't there?
I thought that was 2 that had the blimp.
Yeah, what's the one on 4? There's like either a guy carrying a giant bundle of sticks.
Yeah. He's got a bundle of sticks on the front, and then on the inside, it's the kind of the ink drawing. He's got like a lantern, and he's up on the hill, but the cloak is kind of mostly over his face and stuff.
Yeah. So yeah, that's what I'll be painting on next is those 5, and then they'll be very different from these original 10 that skeletons because the skeletons are all basically everyone's matchy. Everyone's the same color,
Right?
Bones all the same color. These guys are going to be 5 completely separate different models that all have different stuff going on.
Would you still like assembly line those, or are you thinking like one at a time?
Well, no, the reason I do it that way is because sometimes you get like, okay, I got this brown for these guys' boots, but it will work really well in this person's pouch, and it will be a good base color for this person's hair. And it's still, the issue that I always find is if I work on just one model at a time, I'm waiting forever for paint jobs to dry. So for me, it's like a little bit of this, move over to here, a little bit of this. Okay, cool. I don't need this brown anymore, and I'll do something else. And it helps to also sometimes tie them together if some of the colors are especially with things like that are materials like leather or metal. But if you're like working on clothes, you want those generally to be usually different colors unless they're all supposed to be on the same team or some part of the same military uniform outfit, whatever. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, but I still like doing that. It works out nice and it speeds things along for the most part. And then
Nice.
lastly, I think that potentially my long national nightmare with trying to get an Elegoo Saturn is hopefully over. Knock on wood.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Joining the dark side.
yeah. Well, I reached out, like I said, to Elegoo, and I was like, "Hey, I want to get one of these, but they keep getting bought up instantly on Amazon, and then scalpers, and scum of the earth, and all that." And
Yep.
they were like, "Yeah, well, we'll send you one." And I was like, "No, I don't. I want to buy one." So they were like, "Okay." So they sent me an email Thursday night of last week, like 11 o'clock at night, saying, "Oh, hey, here's a
Yeah.
link," and it was to AliExpress. And so I immediately leapt on it. And at that time there was still only 3 left, so I don't know how fast they were going, but I was able to get one. And I have a UPS tracking number, and it's in Canada now, so it'll be here allegedly, maybe even as soon as Friday. So
Nice.
that'll be cool.
Yeah, I hope you like it. I think you will. It's fun. One of my YouTubers I follow, he was just put a video up. It was like a good, I don't know, it was like 5 or 7 minute just short video, and
Mhm.
he was talking about how he spent 20, 30 hours. He said he spent was 20 or 30 hours trying to dial in his Ender, I think it was a CR10 or something. Like, he's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I replaced all the fans, and I replaced this, and I replaced the hot end, and I did this, and I tweaked this, and I did these settings. And he's like, just spent all this time to try to dial it in, and I still don't get great results most of the time. And he's like, so I just had written off 3D printing. He's like, but then I got my first resin, and he's like, and here's my first print, and here's the second print, and I realized I did something wrong, so I couldn't figure out what was wrong. And I went and looked, and our resin he was using needed 3 second cure time, and he had only left it at 2, like, per
Mm.
layer.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, so I swapped it here, and now it's perfect, and here's 10 other models that are now all perfect.
Yeah.
He's like, he goes, I never thought that I would get to this point. It's like, it's night and day for ease.
Yeah, I mean, there's still a part of me that's like, but if I want to print terrain, it would probably still be a better idea to go with FDM, but maybe not, honestly,
Yeah, I know. I keep going back and forth. I'm like, it's more expensive. It is more expensive, but
to go with resin. Yeah, I mean the resin
at the
material
same
certainly.
time, the amount of times I've had failures,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. Because yeah, it's like I know that there's this company, Imperial Terrain, has made this really super cool new web app where instead of them just being like, here's a bunch of Star Wars styled buildings that you can buy for STLs from us and then print them out, they have a web app where you can say, I want the shape of the building to be this. And then they will give you different panels for each of the sides. And you can say, well, I want panel 6 on this one, and panel 4 on this one, and panel 2 on this side. But plus, then you can go into each panel separately and you can customize, be like, I want to move the door over here. I want to put the light switch above the door for some reason. Why not? I want to move this window down really low for cats to come in. Or I don't know. And you can completely customize every side. Not completely, but there's a bunch of customizable stuff on every side. So you're basically kind of building the building the way you want it to look. And then when you're done, you push a button and it spits out an STL, and then you print that. And I really like that concept. And it's not just for Star Wars stuff, although that was their first kind of area, the Star Wars Legion stuff. They've also started to move into stuff that will work well for 40K and other games like that. And I love that concept. I'm a bit concerned if I want to go down that road and try to print some of that stuff resin or not, though I believe I might be able to, because the Elegoo Saturn's got a big enough print area.
Yeah, it is.
But
It is a monster. And then the was it the Neptune? Yeah, I think Neptune's coming. Or was it Jupiter?
Jupiter. Yeah, Jupiter. I think is third. Is that one even bigger? It would make sense if you're going by planets.
It's blue, and it looks, supposedly it's bigger. I guess they teased it like a year ago, and people have been like, okay, it's been a year, and they're like, yeah, we've COVID and production issues and stuff, but they're like, yeah, we're getting ready to start sending out some review copies, so that means based on how Saturn rolled out, in about 3 years, you and I could probably find one.
That could be, yeah. They should make an Elegoo Pluto, and it should be really tiny.
Ooh.
Like
Well, the Mercury
printer.
is the curing station, which I thought was clever.
Yeah. But they should make a Pluto
size.
printer that is like literally like the size of a can of soda, and it makes tiny little prints.
Well, then like halfway through, you realize it's just a paper printer and stuff. And it's no
Yeah, it
longer...
could be. It's just cutting tiny little layers of paper for each of the slices. That would take a long time.
It gets dequalified as a printer, and now it's just a scan. Oh, it could be a scanner.
Oh, yeah. Does Elegoo make a scanner? Well, I mean, I know there are companies out there that make 3D scanners. I just didn't know if some of the...
Nothing that I think is like production quality that I'm aware of.
Yeah. So. I can't think of anything off the top of my head that I would want to scan so that I could then print it. You know what I mean?
The only time I really entertained it, I take that back. There was a couple of times I did entertain it. One was a broken piece of something.
Yeah, I mean that's the benefit, I think.
Yeah. So I
wouldn't
I've
want
modeled
to
scan.
Yeah. You know, I wouldn't want to scan like something that I already bought just so I could print my own. Like I wouldn't want to scan like Space Marine or something like that. That's not legal.
Right. But the other one was I think it was Lee. He had some models that someone had created for him, and then they had lost the STLs or something like that.
Oh gosh!
So they were talking like, "Oh, we're gonna have to recreate it and cost all this money." And I'm like, "Oh, you could probably just scan it in." And so I was starting to look up that stuff for him for how much it would cost to do.
Yeah.
But I think they finally found like a missing file drive or something like that. So it's
that's good then.
But yeah, that was it doesn't seem like. At first, it sounds like, oh yeah, I definitely want to scan it, and you're like, I don't know.
Yeah. I honestly like the only reason I would want to scan something is if I guess I actually hand sculpt it, and I'm not a big hand sculptor, so that's not for me at least.
Feet. I'm a big
sure sculptor. Right. Yeah. So scan feet, why not? But not hand. But yeah, so I do. Like I said, I do want to also, once the printer's here and stuff, and I start printing some things, I do want to probably also start to try to make some things in Tinkercad, little tiny bits and things like that, maybe for terrain embellishments, and see where I can go from there and stuff. So that'll be fun. Let's see. Well, I think that's about it for me. So we've got the subject for today's podcast, today's episode, is about FOMO. And what FOMO stands for is fear of missing out.
Mm-hmm.
So this can relate to all kinds of different things. Specifically, it's like when I was in like college, I had a friend who's always wanted to go out because they were always afraid that if they didn't go out that night, that's the night that cool things were going to happen. And
that's the epic night. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. That's the reason why so many people are buying game stock, because they're like, what if all these people are millionaires and I don't do it? Or when the office pool is doing the lottery and they're like, everybody in the office bought a ticket and you're like, mathematically, this doesn't make sense. And I normally wouldn't buy a ticket myself. But if I don't want to be the only one that
doesn't, yeah.
On the news channel going, yeah, everybody else bought a ticket, but I said I didn't want one.
Yeah. I was on the highway earlier today, and I saw one of those electronic signs and said that the current, I don't know, Powerball's up to like $250 million or something like that. It's like over 200 something.
Like I don't even know what like a normal Powerball is like per week. Like where like when it's not high, like what I feel like it seems like it's always like super high now, but I don't know if that's just because that's what I'm noticing, or
I don't know. I bought a ticket. I bought one of those tickets once, like a really long time ago when it was up really high. At that time, it was like 120 million, and I was like, and I think I had gotten a fortune cookie that said something about how I should buy like a lottery ticket or something like that, or something, and I was like, all right, fine, and then I did because I was at a gas station or something like that.
But did you use the lucky numbers that are also in the fortune cookie?
I think I did, as a matter of fact, because it was in my pocket. I think I did, and I won nothing. So just FYI, in case you're wondering.
That seemed like a foolproof plan. I don't know.
It seemed like it was that. That seems like a retirement plan right there. But anyway, so the fear of missing out, it doesn't just happen in college roommates and stuff like that. It also happens to us in our tabletop gaming. Because new stuff comes out all the time since this podcast has started. And I don't mean, we're 50 episodes in. I don't mean since we started this podcast, almost 2 years ago. I mean, since this episode has started 24 minutes ago, 78 new games have come out, probably, at least. And so, there's a lot of shinies out there, and that's one of the
absolutely.
issues with fear of missing out, is that new stuff comes out. Some people call it shiny syndrome, some people call it cult of the new. Like, this game is cool, but this game is newer that just came out, and so now this other game is old and stupid, even though it's literally been out less than a month. But
we've all turned into like the stereotypical teenage girls are like 9th edition that came out last week. That's not the cool thing anymore. Everybody's doing this instead.
Yeah, no, that's not it. No, everybody's doing this now. Yeah, no, it happens in all forms for the most part. Well, I don't know that it necessarily happens as much in collectible card games.
Oh my gosh, it's horrible there.
Well, but collectible card games have always they have like quarterly releases, but it's like.
But that's the whole reason why people buy the cards. I mean, like when a new collectible card game comes out, some people will just, and I'm included in this, will go and buy that card game just because, in case that becomes the new thing, the new Magic, and you've got the Black Lotus that's worth thousands of dollars.
Oh, see, I've never seen that. Well, because there's so few card games that come out anymore. Like, you've basically got Magic the Gathering.
It's slowed down, but for a while, like the I've got a binder of Star Trek. Collectible card game.
Back in the 90s,
these are going to be worth
tons. The CCG glut that came out in the 90s, where everybody made a CCG. Yes, at that time, that was definitely a fear of missing out, because you wanted to hop in early, because if this was the game that was going to take off, Star Wars CCG, Star Trek CCG, Lord of the Rings CCG, like, I had friends that had all that stuff. And you're right, that you wanted to be that, because if you had the one special alt Captain Kirk card that, in 20 years becomes a $10,000 card, great. But in general, most of them turned into basically cardboard. So there's that. But I'm seeing these days now, because there's not so many of those games coming out, you buy the new stuff that for Magic or Pokemon when the new set comes out, but it's, you knew it was coming out in another 3 months. So it's not like a weird surprise or anything like that.
Right.
But if you play competitively, you need to keep up. Yeah, that's true too.
And
I mean, a lot right now. Right now, Pokemon is super crazy hot. Most of the stores that I know of are selling it at what they call market price. So there's a retail price for this new thing, and it's $49.99. But all the stores are selling it for $85 or something like that, because that's the cheapest it's going for online, on like eBay or whatever, and all that jazz.
Well, and they're limiting as too. I know that when I was in the store right before Christmas, they had the new Pokemon release came out. I wasn't keeping up with it, but my oldest plays it somewhat. He actually played it quite a bit when school was normal. They had a Pokemon club that met once or twice a month, stuff like that. So I was like, there's a new release. Yeah, I'll buy some for stocking gifts, stuffers, and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, we only sell 3. Like, really, you're not letting me buy as many as I want to buy? Like, it was weird.
Well, and again, that's part of what sort of drives sometimes this whole concept of FOMO, is the limited edition or the limited quantities. That's also another thing that kind of drives people a little frantic to pick things up, because they, especially right now because of COVID. Actually, it's because of COVID. In some situations, it's Brexit. In some situations, it's the Suez Canal. I mean, there's all these different things that are going on right now.
Tariffs that we've enacted against the lumber in Canada. So now we can't build houses. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. So there's all these different things that are kind of happening right now. They're sort of limiting production, specifically within tabletop gaming or shipping. There's plenty of companies that are like, our stuff's finished. It's sitting in the factory because we can't get a shipping container, to save our
we were
lives.
just talking about that this morning. The Kickstarter. Yeah. They're like, for 2 months, they're like, no, we need a shipping container. And I was reading some other stuff that that was because it's so bad right now coming out of China, that they're like in I was thinking it was in Canada. I was reading it was like one company's like, we can't get shipping containers. We used to just they would bring over the containers from China, empty it out, and then we would send it back with our stuff. But because the demand is like so high and the costs are going up for each container, that they're just basically unloading it and won't load it back up with stuff because they don't want to wait the extra however many hours to reload it. They're just shipping them back empty because they're making more money if they can get it back faster.
Yeah, because
Just
it's
by those
needed for
several
this.
hours.
Yeah. Yeah, and so all of that right now has impacted the tabletop gaming industry amongst many, many, many other industries, and because of that, there's a situation where the FOMO part of it is like, I know it's available now, but I don't know if it's going to be still available in another couple of weeks. We again to refer back to Cursed City, which I was talking about, the Warhammer Quest Cursed City, that basically came out, sold out. And everyone was like, okay, well, sure, COVID, we get that. So you guys will probably make some more soon because it's a game that's supposed to be around for a while, much like its previous
Blackstone Fortress, right?
Blackstone Fortress was much of the same style of game, but it was sci-fi, whereas this is fantasy. But they're the same style of games. They're both Warhammer Quest games.
Yeah.
And Blackstone Fortress was available, the base game and the expansions. The base game was available for like 2 to 3 years, and the expansions kind of came out during the life of that. Well, all of a sudden there was just no Cursed City, and people were like, well, we'll figure it out. I'm sure there'll be some soon. And then someone tweeted at Games Workshop about it and asked, and the person from Games Workshop who tweeted back said, yeah, it's not going to be back on the website. And it's not. So now there's all these rumors going around about what happened? Is it a problem with, it sounds like it's a perfect storm again of Brexit, COVID, all kinds of things, potentially some sort of production problem, that also reduced the amount. And so, different companies kind of will do that. Some companies will sometimes just limit things, and sometimes it's things that they can't control because it's manufacturing issues.
Or they do it on purpose, like Nintendo.
It feels like Nintendo does it on purpose. You're right. Absolutely. But like, Star Wars Legion, not Star Wars Legion, Star Wars X-Wing, like the pre-painted spaceship game, like they've gotten up until recently, they'd had their production issues kind of figured out, but because those little models are being painted by hand by somebody kind of, I remember times when like new stuff would come out and you just couldn't get things like after the first, it would come out and then it would be gone. And they're like, well, we can only produce them so quickly, and
yeah,
that kind of
I had gotten a Millennium Falcon right at the beginning.
That was a big one.
And then, people would like offering me money when I played, like, oh, well, I'll pay you twice of what you paid for.
Right,
even though
exactly.
it was used and stuff just to have it. I'm like, no. Yeah, it was weird.
I remember going to a convention, like a small little local convention around here, and I was looking through. There was a local store that had brought in a bunch of their stuff that was, had a booth and was selling. A retailer was selling a bunch of stuff, and I was just looking through their Star Wars stuff, and I found a Millennium Falcon. And I was like, oh my goodness. I already had one personally, but I knew my friend Josh didn't. So I like texted him. I'm like, hey, do you want this? Because he's like, what, is it new? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, how much does it cost? I'm like, retail. He's like, yes, please.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I think I did that with Jason that works with us at Fire and Ice. I found one and I'm like, it's in the box and there's charging MSRP. He's like, yeah, pick it up. I don't care.
Exactly. So yeah, like that kind of thing, that those limited quantities that we see in some situations, they can definitely cause FOMO, because you can be in a situation where you find it at a place like that. You find it at a store, you find it at a convention or whatever, and you're like, oh my God, if I walk away from this, it's going to disappear. I can't tell you how many times I've been to conventions.
About your Saturn printer. I mean,
oh yeah, exactly.
They are selling them for $800. They're $500 retail.
Yeah, it's a $500 printer retail,
and at least every month they are like, they'll put another like a couple hundred up on Amazon, and they go pretty fast. But all the scalpers are selling them for $800. Yep. But there are people that are buying it at $800, and like I know that for myself, when I had some orders come in that people were like, it wasn't going to fit, and I really wanted to do it on resin. Like I came close to pulling the trigger on the 800, like as much. It was like, well, but I don't know how long it's going to be before I can get one. And I looked at, like, there was like a competitive brand like Any Photon. Theirs was, I think, Anycubic. Thank you. Anycubic Photon was like, I want to say it was like 900 or 1,000. And I debated on that one, even though the Saturn was supposed to be better and supposed to be half the cost. But the whole like, oh well, I need to get these out, and I don't know when it's going to be back. There's some psyche that goes on there.
Oh, absolutely. And that's one of the problems, obviously, that that FOMO can cause, is that it can be very costly. Sometimes it's costly in that, like, it's a limited thing, and then scalpers, and you're like, do I pay the scalpers? I mean, I'm going to tell you always never pay the scalper price, but I'm not you, so I can't definitively say absolutely don't. But if you want a suggestion, I would tell you never buy from a scalper. Screw those guys. That's my own personal opinion. But even if you're buying stuff at retail or even discount retail, but you're buying stuff because you're like, well, it's the new shiny thing, or it's, well, I need this. Maybe it's limited edition. Maybe it's not. We don't know. So I better get it now. That can be very costly, because you could end up buying a lot of stuff that maybe you're not going to particularly use. You're not going to necessarily, like, you might use it down the road. And I will do this all the time. I buy things sometimes because I'm like, I know I'm going to want this in the future. And I have a lot of shelving in the basement, so I can set, a box of miniatures aside, a little box of miniatures, and say, I know where this is. And then when it's time to, like, do a new project, first thing I always do is shop my basement. I just walk through the shelves and go, did I already pick this up someplace? Do I have something that will work for this? And I'll be like, oh yeah, these guys. And there are times that this is the thing I've been doing too lately, is if I buy a box of miniatures, let's say, because I find it at a store, maybe it's out of print everywhere, out of production, but the store particularly has it. And that's why you go to local stores, is because they'll have stuff that's been sitting on the shelf for sometimes a long time that you can't get anyplace else. But when I decided I want this because of this, I want to kit bash this to do this, or I want to use it for this game, I'll take a Sharpie and write it on the box when I get home. Like a note to myself, like, why did I buy this? You know what I mean? Because sometimes you come back 2 years later and you look at the box and go, well, why did I do that? Why do I have this? And, there was a reason at the time, but,
Yeah, I thought I was doing that with, like, paint, especially because, like, the contrast paints, when they first came out, they were pretty limited as well.
Yeah, they were.
And it was like, so you could only get certain colors, like, there was a rarity to different colors. And so sometimes I would see it and go, I don't need this color right now, but I might need this color later. And so now I did find, like, there was like one or two that I have that I don't really like the color, but I have two of them because I didn't realize I already had one. And
yeah, that's the thing too, is trying to track, at least to some degree, like, because there's been times you're at the game store and you maybe you want to buy something. Maybe you sat there and played, like, with a friend at the game store,
right?
In the before times, and you were there all day, and you're like, I want to buy something before I leave. I don't want to be like jerk and just, like, breathe up all their air and take up their space and then leave. But so you're like, oh, okay, well, I'll just buy this paint. And then you get home and you're like, oh, I already have that one or whatever. So that's always a bit of a trouble too.
Yeah, I use that paint app, the paint
pad or whatever. Yeah.
Paint pad, to track it now. But even then, sometimes I'll, like, some of the hobby stores, my phone isn't working great with the internet connection. So I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
Pretty sure I don't have this.
One of them in Appleton is like a dead zone.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've had that. Another thing besides cost, obviously, because cost is obviously an issue, but for some people it's less of an issue. It depends how much money you make or whatever, that kind of thing. But the other situation can be storage, which can also sometimes be an issue for some people and less of an issue for others. I have a relatively good sized basement, and I have, for the most part, the run of most of it. So there's that too. And I don't plan on setting up a skating rink down there or any of that. So I can put in a bunch of shelves and things. And so I've got places to put stuff. But if you live in an apartment and don't have access to, like, a basement and things like that, you've got, like, a closet you can keep all your hobby stuff in. Like, you can run out of space real quick by really, like, listening to FOMO a lot, if you're getting into. I mean, how many times have we had conference calls with folks who are board gamers, where you see just giant racks of board games behind their head? You know what I mean? Like, that seems to be the backdrop for Zoom calls for people who are like,
exactly. I was going to say, I'm surprised that that's not a Zoom backdrop already. Like,
it should be, really, yeah. Like giant, huge library.
And that's the one thing I've noticed the worst with, like Kickstarters, because you're not sure you're going to be able to get it later. And you're like, oh, but they're going to sell it for $45 in the store. They might not sell for $45, but that's what they're claiming on the Kickstarter.
Right.
If you get it with the Kickstarter, you can get it for $20 for this whole other expansion. And you're like, I haven't even played this game, but I now own, like, 8 expansions plus the 30 stretch goals, and I had to have 5 UPS trucks pull up to my house to deliver everything.
Right. Yeah.
For this one game I've never played, I hope I like, and now I have no place to store any other game.
And when we get to solutions, we're going to talk a little bit about Kickstarters. But yeah, no, that can definitely snowball on you, especially when it's a situation where you do the Kickstarter, and then it's out of sight, out of mind for a while. And sure, you get an email from them with sometimes time from updates and this and that and other stuff. And then all of a sudden one day, like this happened to me, all of a sudden one day I come back to my cubicle at my previous job, and there is a box that is blocking the door to my cubicle that is massive. And I bend down to pick it up, and I find out later on the invoice that it is 27 pounds. And it was the 6th edition Ogre game from Steve Jackson Games. And it is just a massive box that there's no place good in the house to put it. I can't fit it underneath the bed because it won't fit underneath. I thought I was going to put it underneath the bed in the guest room upstairs. And then I took it up there, lugged it up there, and then tried to push it underneath the bed, and it wouldn't go. It's too tall. So I was like, all right. So now it sits like in the bottom of a closet, and it's very unwieldy because it won't go on a shelf. It's a giant pain. But that kind of stuff, that the storage can be a real issue. And so it's not, sometimes it's big stuff, sometimes it's just a lot of stuff, but that's one of the downsides obviously to FOMO, especially if again, if you're that cult of the new, where you're constantly getting the new stuff that comes out. Oh, this new board game came out, it's really cool, or whatever. And even just books, RPGs and stuff like that can take up a ton of space.
So I was excited because we've got 2 fireplaces in my house right now. Right now they're non-operable because but the people before us didn't take care of stuff, and we found out there's lots of issues, and my house could burn down if I use them until I get them fixed.
Let's not do that.
Yeah, so we're waiting to get them fixed because it's expensive and all that fun stuff. But anyway, so back to the original part of the story was that I was excited. I'm like, oh, now I've got fireplaces and stuff like that. I can burn up all my when you get a board game, you got all the punch out stuff, so you have all the cardboard pieces.
Oh yeah, like the thing that holds all the punch outs. Yeah, or the pieces, yeah.
So I was like, oh, now I can use that for my fire starters, and
if they're a nice thick chipboard, that'll burn for a while.
Yeah,
and supplement your furnace bill.
Yeah, so you will be kind of surprised how fast that builds up, because I don't know, probably 6 months, people coming over to they bring a new game, oh, I'll take all those, and it's I've got a huge bin right now that's just filled with them because I haven't had enough fires. And it's holy cow, even storage of that kind of stuff builds up really fast. I for doing miniature stuff, I told my wife, I think it was you or a YouTube video was corks from wine is great for basting and stuff. I'm like, oh, my wife likes wine. I told her to can you start saving some of your corks or whatever? And so I don't know, a while goes by, and I finally said, hey, did you ever remember to save any of your corks? She's like, oh yeah, I have a whole bin of it. And I didn't realize she had taken a bag, a grocery bag, and had just been throwing them in there. And now I have way more corks than I will ever use. And I'm don't save anymore.
Exactly.
I'm now a little worried that my wife has a drinking problem.
Well,
but it's wine. A glass of wine every couple nights, that's fine. But it'll go fast with just doing that. So
yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. And I did the same thing with prescription medicine. Not so much. I mean, I have to take prescription medicine, but the pill bottles are great for. I used to use them as handles. I would use poster putty to stick the model to the pill bottle, and it worked great for a handle. But now I use those Games Workshop handles. I like those a little bit better. But I still use the bottles for just you've got a bunch of stuff I cut up a bunch of cork, right? And now I don't just want to lay it around on my desk, so I'll throw it into a pill bottle. And it's nice to have those, but eventually you're now I have way too many pill bottles, and I can't use all of them. So.
Yeah, I was I didn't realize that I had this many pill bottles. Dear God, there's a pharmacy right now that does not have pill bottles because they are all at my house.
Exactly. They should be recyclable. They must be recyclable. They're normal plastic, aren't they? I would think so. I can always throw in the recycle thing.
Probably not. To say?
Yeah. Now, the other issue that you can have with FOMO, though, is that you can put yourself into and it depends on the genre, but I think it really is the case with most of the genres. You can put yourself into a position where you're not able to focus on one game long enough to really learn it or enjoy it. I mean, we've talked about this in the past, like how many different board gamers out there own all these board games that each of them they have played like once or twice, if
Right.
that.
Yeah,
You know
yeah.
what I
Because
mean?
you're like, oh yeah, that was a fun game. We played that once. We don't need to play it
Hmm.
again. Like what? But I
Right.
want to play it again. Like yeah, but we already know what it's like. We don't have. I got this new game.
Yeah, but
I got 3 games that came in Kickstarter this week. We
that
got to
game
play
was that
those.
game was $75. We're just going to play it once. I mean, yeah, exactly, same type of thing.
Yeah, which is
Uh,
why it's always kind of funny. Like I totally understand the concept because I was the same way. Like when the Legacy games came out, and you're like, well,
mm,
you got to rip these cards up and stuff like that. And I'm like, oh, I'm not going to rip them up. I'll just put them aside,
hmm
And it's like, no, rip them up
Well,
because you really are not ever like by the time you get done, you're gonna have played the game 25 times.
yeah,
This
I
is
mean, like that
probably
was a
gonna be one of your
situation,
most played board games that you own.
right? Like one of those situations, like Risk Legacy was one of the first
Yeah.
Legacy games out there,
Hmm.
and people got real snooty about it, kind of when it launched, because they were like, "Well, you can only play that game like 17 times before it's completely all used up."
Right.
And I remember hearing that and thinking to myself, how many of my friends who play board games have ever played the same game 17 times? I mean, I'm not saying it hasn't happened. I'm saying it doesn't happen that frequently.
No,
So, you know
it's
what I
definitely
mean?
one of those things that it's like the pill bottles. Like I did not realize how often I don't play a game over and over again until
Right.
you did the legacy, and I'm like, shoot, I've got 2 legacy games I haven't finished, like that are only halfway through.
Yeah.
Like,
So it's when you're playing a lot of different things and you're constantly bringing in new stuff like that. I mean, there's it's a personal preference thing, but there's a very good chance, especially like within miniature games, because a board game, you open it, you sit down, you play, you put it away. That's fine.
mhm.
But RPGs and miniatures have a bit more of a time. I don't want to say sink, but like a time investment. With miniatures, you got to build
Mhm.
those little people and you got to paint them and all that stuff and kind of learn the game. And then, with
Yeah,
RPGs, there's
I've got
backstory
like
and this and that and the other thing.
right, I've got like 3 miniature stuff right now that I've built.
Hmm.
Um, some are painted, some are like halfway painted, but I haven't finished because I feel like everybody's moved on from the game. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
like Gaslands, we just haven't got well, part of us it's we haven't got a chance to play, but on the other hand, we haven't pushed for it because we're playing some other ones. And like Shadespire, when
Hmm.
Underworld Shadespire came out,
Yep.
like I was like, so I finally got into that, and I finally got my stuff painted, and then I'm like, yeah, but nobody wants to play anymore.
I mean, the upside to some degree, especially with that particular game and some of the other games like that from Games Workshop, is that they also make those models so they'll work for Age of Sigmar. So you could then turn it into an Age of Sigmar army if you
Right.
wanted to, or the core or the beginning of it. So there's benefit there. Plus, also miniatures are always usable. You can always use orcs and something. You know what I mean? And
Right.
that's fun too. But yeah, it is. That's the thing, and all of this stuff, the cost, the storage, the inability to focus, all of this comes together to basically cause very frequently buyer's remorse. Like it comes into a situation where down the road you're like staring at shelves full of games and you're like, ugh, or you're
Yeah,
looking
you're
at the
like, oh,
money
if I
that
had
you
just
spent
saved
on
all
it,
that
you're like, ugh.
money,
Hmm.
yeah. If I had just put
And
all that into Dogecoin, I'd be a billionaire right now.
right, yeah. I mean, and that's the thing is that it's like it's the difference between like there's the fear of missing out. So you're like, oh, I'm nervous about missing out. But then
Yeah.
when you don't miss out and you buy all these things and whatever, now you have this new type of not so much a fear, but more of a remorse, and
Right. Because you're like,
that can
oh,
be the
hey,
definite negative.
I pre-ordered this game. Because I didn't want to miss out on this new game that was coming out because this is the hot designer. Everybody wanted to play
Hmm.
it. Came out,
Hmm.
and I absolutely hate the game, and I will never play it again. But
Right.
everyone else bought the game too, so nobody's buying it.
So you can't really
Copy.
flip it on eBay very easily, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I've seen that. So what are the solutions? Like, how do we fix this issue?
There are
Um,
none. That's just no.
Okay, well there you go. There's the show, folks. I mean, and again, these are all kind of down to personal preference. These are down to we're not saying this is the hard and fast law.
Right.
It's more of a situation of us saying these are suggestions you may want to take a look at. We mentioned
Right.
Kickstarters earlier. One
Hmm.
suggestion may be to just kind of kick back to cut back on the Kickstarters and other impulse buys. I got a
Hmm.
friend who always thinks about something like if there's a new game that they're interested in, they always think about it for I don't know, 24 or 48 hours. Like they refuse to buy anything. Like if they just learned about a thing, they will not buy it for the first, I think it's like 48 hours. Even if it's a Kickstarter, they're just like,
Yeah.
nope, I got to think about it for like 2 days. And then very frequently after you've given yourself that time to sort of think about it, obviously you're not thinking about the entire time for 24 hours or for 24 or 48 hours. You're sleeping and watching TV and going to work and stuff, but it's constantly kind of in the back of your mind and you're sort of kind of muddling it around. And then you can make a decision that's maybe a little bit more clear, I guess, or informed,
Yeah, I always wondered for the longest time why the dollar pledge was on Kickstarter. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why, but one of the things that I found helped me not buy every Kickstarter was if I even got past like that, like I tried not to get it right away. And if I did kind of get to like that 24 hours, like a day or two later, like, I'm still thinking about it. I might sometimes will just put in the dollar pledge. And that way you kind of get access to like the comments. You can see what other people are doing. If you're like, oh, tons of people are buying it, or
and you're getting the email updates and you're getting, all these other things
get an idea
that
of
are
like,
harder to get at.
There's tons of stretch rewards coming out, or people are starting to, are watching the demo and they're like, hey, but this is a weird thing with the game. I don't know if I like this. It might give you a little bit more insight into it. And then you can also kind of follow along. And I found that, you got like a 30-day campaign. And if you get emails like daily or every other day for a campaign for 24 days or something, you're either going to go, oh, I'm reading each one and I'm hanging on every last word. Like I'm still getting stuff for Dark Tower. And it's like, oh, we did this little thing with the electronics. Here's a video of the tower lighting up. And I'm like, okay, let me watch this. I'm like, the fact that I'm still watching a 5-minute video after I've seen so many emails tells me I'm glad I backed it.
Exactly. So if you're able that's a good purchase for you.
Yeah. So if you're able to like sit there and watch all these updates and you're not like, oh, I don't care anymore, then, that could help you like go, okay, yeah, I'm going to go up to the pledge level I want.
Yeah, I think that's a very good use for that particular thing. Some people are like, oh, it's just a tip or something and you want to help. But really what it does is, and the thing is that you don't even have to spend $1 to be able to look at most of the updates and all that jazz and the comments. But this way, at least with the updates, you're getting those emails direct as opposed to, I don't know, is there a way to get them without the $1 thing? Can you just say, I want to get all the emails on this thing? But not pay the $1.
I think there's some stuff you have to be the backer. Yeah, I take that back. I think that if you're following it, there's a follow, and depending on when the person sends out stuff, they can send it to anyone that's following it, and then only backers.
Or just backers, yeah. So there's a benefit to maybe even trying that. If you're interested, but you're still not sure, but you want to basically kind of keep them bugging you as opposed to you having to remember to go look at it, that's really the benefit. So, that's definitely a thing. I think another thing is, you just being able to sit down and really look at it and go, okay, is this something I need? And need is obviously, we're talking about games here. This is
does it bring me joy?
Right, exactly. But the situation is you feel like, okay, if I do decide I gotta get this new whatever, I gotta get this new thing, whatever, then it's important, I think, to go back through your current collection and get rid of something that you don't need, because then that way at least you can feel a little better about maybe you made a little bit of money, maybe you didn't, maybe you gave it to a friend, but at least it's not in your house anymore. You've got a spot now on your shelf for when this thing shows up, whether it's a new thing you're buying that's coming out right now or it's available now, or if it's something that's going to be a Kickstarter and you're going to get it eventually. But you've at least gotten rid of a thing. We talked about this a little bit back in episode 23, which was titled "When Is It Time to Let Go of Games?" Which was talking about like going through your collection and figuring out, do I play this anymore? Is there a reason I still have this? Like why? And this is kind of that same thing.
Yeah, don't let FOMO hurt you where you're like, but someday in 50 years, American Pickers is going to come through my attic and realize that I have, this weird version of Munchkin that and they're going to offer me $50,000 for. They're probably
that seems super unlikely. That's a good point.
If you don't want it, probably most people else are not going to want it either.
Exactly. Oh yeah, absolutely. But yeah, that kind of thing. Just if you're gonna be bringing in something new, it's not a bad idea to try real hard to get rid of something. Maybe a couple of somethings. You know what I mean? as opposed to just constantly adding and adding and adding to the pile. That's, I think, an important thing. And it, even though it doesn't necessarily take, even like I said, if it's a giveaway, if you're just like, hey, I'm not playing this anymore, and I know you like this, why don't you, do you want it? And I'd be like, yeah, cool. Great. It's still at least not on your shelf. You didn't, make any resale money on it, things like that. But if you can do that, great. But at the very least, it's not in your possession anymore, and that's cool. But if you give it to a friend, maybe they'll bring it over and play it sometime. If you guys decide to change your mind at some point, it's not out of the universe, right? And another thing too is, and this doesn't work obviously for everything, but for RPGs it can work, and definitely for miniatures and stuff like that. If you're concerned about space and even to some degree money, because these things have a tendency to be cheaper than full blown, physical products, digital stuff like PDFs, STLs, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
They're never in limited quantities, basically. Like they're never like, oh, we're completely out of this PDF. That's not a thing.
Well, now that they have the NFTs, I don't know.
Well, yeah, don't do that. That's no good. But yeah, the PDF thing is useful because not only are they always in stock, you can get them at any time you want. You get them instantly, pretty much, and you can keep them in your hard drive, your iPad, whatever. They don't take up any like physical space. Yeah. Oh my God! Just so many shelves and everything.
Yeah, I was looking this morning. My Audible collection is 274 books.
Wow!
So 274 books I can go access that I've bought at any point.
Don't take up a ton of space on the shelf. Now, my wife is a big book fan, so we have a lot of bookshelves. But she's been trying to pare things down because she's just like, she wants to keep the books that are really important as opposed to just keeping every book that she ever picks up. Yeah. But the PDFs, I'm a big fan of PDFs. I like PDF games for miniatures and that kind of stuff. And STLs are great because you can have, if you buy them, let's say you do a Kickstarter or something like that, you can have hundreds of STLs that are really not taking up any space. Now, when you start printing them, they start taking up space, but then you're not also getting a box of miniatures and then going, well, I really only wanted 4 of these. You know what I mean?
Right.
So there's a benefit to that.
Yeah, you don't have bits all over the place. And you can also scale them too, like STLs. Like a brand new game came out. It's a Western. You really like it, but it's 18 millimeter, and you're like, oh, but all my stuff is 32 millimeter. Hey, guess what? STLs, scale them down, and now you can go print up a bunch of stuff for it, and you can play.
Yeah, scale up, scale down, and tweak things, and that works out really nicely too. So that's something to think about as well, as far as still being able to buy games if space is an issue, look towards things that are more digital. And then another thing you can do is to split your buys with other people, share the game, share the minis. I mean, it doesn't work with everything. Like that's not going to work so well with collectible card games, particularly.
Usually not, but
I mean, if you do maybe like a draft or something, I don't know. But for like
you could buy a box. You maybe buy a box of the release versus everyone buying 5 packs and then split it up. You might save some money that way.
Yeah, that's true too. And the other thing too that you can do is to like I said with the splitting it up with other people, like. Maybe if you've got a gaming group, not everybody in the same gaming group needs to buy the same game, especially for board games.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like one person buys this game, one person buys this game. As long as you coordinate and know that you're kind of a standard gaming group, you can be like, well, all right, I'll buy this one, but then you buy this game that we're interested in. And that's helping to defer costs and defer
I've seen some
space.
that they'll do dues and stuff, and they'll kind of build a gaming library out of that, because then you can rent those or use them for parties and stuff too. But you can do that and split it up. Everybody, $5 every gaming night we all put in, or $2, and that goes and buys some of the new games and stuff.
And we've seen obviously like plenty of like starters for miniatures games where people will buy it
with 2 armies or whatever.
Right. Yeah. So someone buys it, and then like 2 people, like I'll take all the goblins and you take all the, skeletons or whatever, as opposed to I don't need the goblins and the skeletons. I just want the goblins. And so then that way we're both saving some money and also saving some space and that kind of stuff. Because we're only getting, half of the stuff. So yeah, there's definite benefits, I think, to that as well. And I think that can really help with people to, the main thing you're trying to avoid really is, I mean, with the fear of the fear in that situation of missing out, you're trying to make it so that you didn't miss out. So that helps get, assuage your fear, as it were. But then eventually that chicken comes home to roost, and now you have buyer's remorse, or you have too much stuff in your basement or your closet or you're under your bed or whatever. And so the idea is that if we can kind of fix that a little bit, or if you can hopefully try to, mitigate that in some degree, it'll help and make you feel better. Because really it comes down to the for lack of a better term, mental drain really is what this is doing to you. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. It's not just draining your wallet. It's draining.
It's draining your wallet, let's say, but then you're sad about your wallet being drained, and that's an issue. And so you have, maybe anxiety about that, or anxiety about where you're going to put all these games, or what your roommates or your parents or your spouse or something is going to say when they find a giant stash of games underneath the bed or whatever, and that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So it's great that there are so many different games that come out constantly, and there's so many different things to choose from. We live in a golden age of tabletop gaming, I think, to some degree. But the important thing is to try not to buy them all. They're not Pokemon. You don't have to catch them all. So yeah, I don't know if that Pokemon joke landed. Probably didn't, actually. But
I laughed.
There was a snicker. I appreciate it. Yeah, that's fine. So yeah, so I hope that if you've got some, things that help you to combat FOMO, you can, if you're watching this on YouTube, you drop that in there, or if you want to shoot us an email, maybe we can talk about this stuff later on in another episode or something like that.
Or topic ideas, or if you have a question, and you're like, I don't know what he meant by when he said this. Yeah, absolutely. You can throw that stuff in there as well. We appreciate it. Thanks again for listening to this episode of the GameFor Podcast. If you've got questions or comments, and you're watching on YouTube, as I was just mentioning, please leave a comment below. If you're listening via your favorite podcast player, or just aren't into the whole YouTube comment section thing, then you can feel free to reach out to us via email at podcast@imgamefor.com. You can also keep up to date with us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and check out our website at www.imgamefor.com. That is www.imgamefor.com. Thanks.